Words of the master. Okay, so this week's words of the master, we're going to talk about these parables about the wedding feast. Yeshua over here speaks about parables of the wedding feast. When we look at the words of the master, we look at and talk about the things that Yeshua actually said. You know, if you have a red letter Bible, these are those red letters. And so we talk about the things that he said and the situations that caused him to speak. And this week we're going to look at Luke 14. Luke 14, 1 through 24. Luke 14, 1 through 24. We'll just go ahead and read through. We'll read through these verses and then we'll go back and talk about what they say over here.
Luke 14 and 1. And it came to be, as he went into the house of one of the rulers of the Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. And see, there was a certain man before him suffering from dropsy. And Yeshua responding spoke to those learned in the Torah and the Pharisees, saying, "Is it right to heal on the Sabbath?" But they were silent. So taking hold of him, he healed him and let him go. And to them he said, "Which of you, having a donkey or an ox that has fallen into a pit, shall not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day?" And they were unable to answer him regarding these matters. And he spoke a parable to those who were invited when he noted how they chose the best places, saying to them, "When you are invited by anyone to a wedding feast, do not sit in the best place, lest one more distinguished than you be invited by him. And he who invited you and him come and say to you, 'Give this one place,' and then you begin to, with shame, to take the last place. Rather, when you are invited, go and sit down in the last place, so that when he who invited you comes, he shall say to you, 'Friend, come up higher.' Then you shall have esteem in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. For everyone who is exalting himself shall be humble, and he who is humbling himself shall be exalted." And he also said to them who invited him, "When you give a dinner or a supper, do not ask your friends, nor your brothers, nor your relatives, nor your rich neighbors, lest they also invite you back, and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite poor ones, crippled ones, lame ones, blind ones, and you shall be blessed, because they do not have to repay you. For you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." And when one of those who sat at the table with him heard this, and said to him, "Blessed is he who eats the bread in the reign of Elohim." But he said to him, "A certain man gave a great supper and invited many. And he sent his servant at supper time to say to those who were invited, 'Come, for all is now ready.' But one by one they all began making excuses. The first said to him, 'I have brought a field, and I need to go see it. I ask you to have me excused.' And another said, 'I have brought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm going to try them out. I ask you to have me excused.' And the other said, 'I have married a wife, and because of this I am unable to come.' And that servant came and reported to his master. Then the master of the house, being wroth, said to his servant, 'Hurry out into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring him here the poor, the crippled, the lame, and blind.' And the servant said, Master, it is done as you commanded, and still there is room. And the master said to the servant, Go out into the street corners and the hedges and compel them to come in, so that my house is filled. For I say to you that none of those men who were invited shall taste my supper.
All right. Very good. There's a lot that goes on over here. It's interesting. We just think about the things that happen. You know, we have this situation that happens, and then Yeshua goes into these parables. And based on the way in which these people behave, you know, it brings about the things that Yeshua decides to speak on. And so if we go back to the beginning over here and we look at the first verse, it's interesting that, you know, Yeshua finds himself in these situations with people who presumably don't really mess with him like that. You know, the Pharisees is the ones who got something out against Yeshua and who sometimes try to kill him. And so this is another situation where we see Yeshua going and sitting down with these Pharisees. Now it could be, first of all, let's go to this first verse here and look at where it says the first verse. He went into the house of one of the rulers of the Pharisees. First of all, when we think about the Pharisees, they wasn't set up where they had like a ruler of the Pharisees. And so when we look at that, it makes us look at that and think that there was like a Pharisee like boss or a Pharisee like leader or whatever. And so the Pharisees, they were more kind of a collective where they had a council of individuals. And so they want us to just know that this particular Pharisee was kind of one of those chief among many. Okay. He wasn't kind of your run-in-the-mill Pharisee. He was, one of the collective of elders within the Pharisees. But it says that to eat bread on the Sabbath. I want to look at that there. To eat bread on the Sabbath. Look at that word there. Pull that up there for us so we can look at this, because it's potentially deceptive here. The bread word. Artos. Let's look at the Thayer's definition of this here, because here look at what you had. You had the Strong's of that Artos, loaf of bread, bread loaf. Strong's. We always have to remember Strong's is not comprehensive as it relates to the definitions of words. It's comprehensive in relation to the fact that it's able to kind of give you a definition for all of the words in the Bible. In that way, it's comprehensive. Every single word, it'll give you a definition for it. But as a lexicon, so as a dictionary, it's comprehensive in terms of it looks at every single word. But as far as a lexicon, it don't always give you all of the particular meanings of every word. And so this right here, it gives you the surface level, Artos means bread.
What I know from Artos is that it's like there's like that whole debate about the communion bread. There's artos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the people, there's people who look at this word and this is their coup de grace. This is their thing that they go to, and you want to sit up here and act like the bread, they ate bread and that's communion. No, it's not.
They try to say that
It's actual bread they was eating.
At the Last Supper.
But here is an instance where this word artos is used, where we're able to understand that this word is used different ways. Look at Thayer's right there. Thayer's is, if we're going to talk about lexicons, Thayer's is greater than Strong's, right? Go down to number 2, right? All those were number 1. It also could mean food of any kind. The principal thing that you have at a meal is going to be the bread. But it's not going to be the only thing that you're eating. It's that you're having what happened, Yeshua went to these people's house for a meal on Shabbat. Shabbat meal, as a matter of fact, is where he was. They was having a Shabbat meal.
You think they was eating a fish?
Yes, they probably was having. What I was going to talk about briefly a little bit is interesting when we think about the Shabbat meal. This thing that these people, that they're eating over here. And so this was a grand situation. And we kind of see this in the connection that Yeshua is making when he deals with this idea of this wedding feast. Because the Shabbat meal, this Shabbat meal that they was having, it was kind of it was a big thing. It was a big deal. That they was having here, and when you think about the enormity of what they would do for their Shabbat meal, it's interesting that you think about this artos word here, this thing bread, because the idea of them having a Shabbat meal and it just only being bread in the context of the how they moved, that in of itself doesn't even make any sense. Because they was having a serious situation was happening over here in terms of, they was having a feast. They was having a feast. We'll talk more about the kind of this feast that they were in fact having, but in the context of the wedding feast. But I just wanted to briefly bring out the fact that when we say in verse 1 where it says that they ate bread, that is more than just bread. They was having a whole meal. They was having an actual feast right there. And then it says in that first verse that they were watching him closely. They were watching him closely. Excuse me. And so it's interesting because you think about the fact that you could think that perhaps the person who has invited Yeshua to this meal, it was a totally innocent thing where, he's cool with Yeshua, kind of like how Nicodemus was secretly. And this one, Yeshua, he's my guy. I'm gonna have him over for this wonderful meal and, impress him with my spread and, have nothing but kind of the best things for him. But why did they add this other part here that they were watching him closely? As if this was some kind of interrogation thing. It's a setup. It's a setup move, just like how we see the other thing that happened. Kind of the same exact situation, that happened before is happening again. It says that they watched him closely. And so it's interesting that here read again for us verse number 2.
And see, there was a certain man before him suffering from dropsy.
Okay, it says about this certain man. And so remember, they're at somebody's house.
They know everybody in the house.
Yes. Well, they might not know everybody in the house, but everybody in the house is there as a result of an invitation. They was all brought there for something. This man here was brought here. He was a prop. And he was the bait for Yeshua to do something, that they oftentimes caught him doing, healing, at particular times. Because again, this was the Sabbath. And so if we go up, let's look at first of all this person. It said that he was suffering from dropsy. Now we in these days and times don't have any idea what that even is. Because the thing that they call dropsy back in the days, we don't refer to it as that anymore. We refer to it as something else. But when you think about what was going on with this person, there was some type of inflammation. When it says there, look at that, as if looking watery, to be dropsical. Look at the Greek there where it says hydropikos, where that sounds like hydro, right? Which is water. And so it has to do with like an inflammation kind of a thing. And so it's like when you get inflamed and swollen, water retention, but very kind of a swelling, yes. And so they looked at that in those times and thought of it as its own thing. But meanwhile, in modern medicine, we understand that this thing is kind of a symptom of something greater that's going on. I think it turned into edema, whatever edema is. If we have any medical people,
I think about that as the people that got the legs that go like straight down to their feet. Like they're so
Oh, you mean because their ankles get swollen like that? Yeah, and it's all the same, yeah. And I don't know if that's it, but I'm saying this thing that's called dropsy, now we call it edema. But it has to do with a swelling. It's interesting. The people, the rabbis of old, they said something interesting I thought was interesting. They said that man is half water and half blood in equal parts. If he is virtuous, water does not prevail over blood, but blood over water. But if he sins, soon the water prevails over blood, and then he gets dropsy.
So it's literally tying dropsy to sin.
Well, they tied all these ailments to sin. If there was something wrong with you, they're looking at you like, what sin is it that you're doing? And so, yes, they're looking at these things and absolutely tying these things into sin. But the interesting thing that we want to kind of focus in on is the fact that this person who has this disease that's dealing with an overabundance of water, as if his organs and body is drowning within itself. Right? His body parts are drowning with an excess of water. And that's kind of what this whole dropsy thing is. So we want to remember what this dropsy thing is in terms of how it's looked at in terms of this thing of you know, kind of the body drowning itself, and the fact that this guy that was brought there, he wasn't necessarily part of the family. They call him a certain man. So he seemed like he's a random guy, but he's in this intimate meeting. They brought him there to catch Yeshua doing something that he often did, which was heal on the Sabbath.
And possibly, if they was part of the people that thought dropsy was sin, tell him that he was his sins were forgiven of him.
Right. They could have got him in certain ways. And the way that they thought about people with ailments is the fact that they was in sin, and there was an idea of unrighteousness connected with sicknesses. And these are some quote unquote righteous people. So what is they even hanging out with this guy for? And so there's all these things that point us to the idea that this guy didn't necessarily belong there, but was there kind of as this setup move. But the greater part is the way that Yeshua responds to all of this, and also the way that he turns this into kind of this. He turns his chastisement into this kind of lesson that's totally connected to what's actually going on. Can you read again verse 3?
And Yeshua responding spoke to those learned in Torah and the Pharisees, saying, "Is it right to heal on the Sabbath?"
Yeshua asked them this first before he did anything. It's almost like he's fake asking for permission. What you think? You think I should heal this guy? Is it right for me to heal this man on the Sabbath? This person that you sit up here implanted into the situation? Why did Yeshua, why did he do this here? I thought that was funny. And then in verse 4, they was all silent. Nobody didn't say nothing. Now you don't want to talk. Now you don't want to say nothing. When he's in there, Yeshua asking them, about this whole thing. Now you don't got nothing to say. I feel like Yeshua's taunting the Pharisees to me. He's taunting them. To me, I feel like he's doing it. I don't know if he's doing it or not, but I feel like that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Because they want to sit up there and act like this thing that he do is some kind of a sin. Why wasn't they just like, yeah, it is. It ain't right. Like they have nothing to say. So in their silence, he just go ahead and heals the man. And then sends him out. He let him go. Because he wasn't really there with them in the first place. He was this pawn, no D. He was this pawn in the game that they was playing. So he heals them and lets them go. And then he hits them with the parables. With the connected parables. Let's see if we can figure out how they connected. Let's look at verse 5. Can you read again verse 5 again?
And to them he said, which of you, having a donkey or an ox that has fallen into a pit, shall not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day?
Okay, very good. And so the obvious thing here is the fact that you have this possession, this thing that you somewhat care about, potentially a possession that becomes something bad happens, inconvenienced, an accident, a great problem that needs immediately solved. Do you do it on the Shabbat, even if doing it looks like it's a sin. You know, that's kind of the overarching kind of a thing that's over here. But the connecting piece, I think, is if we look at the word pit there. Look at the word pit, 54:21. 54:21, uncertain derivative, a hole in the ground, dug for attaining or holding water. Cistern, a well. It's a pit, yes. It's a hole, yes, but it's this thing that holds water. The animal going to not only fall in the pit, but it's going to drown in the pit too. Just like dropsy. He sees this man that got this dropsy, this thing where his body's drowning in his own self, and he says, I'm going to save you from your body drowning in yourself. Right now. Right when I see it, I'm going to do it. But again, it's this disease of drowning, and he says, I'm going to pull you out. Just like as if you was an animal of mine that fell in the pit. That's going to drown and die. And when he does this thing, the people, when he says what he says over here in terms of this whole analogy, this terrible thing, this analogy that he gives, the people still don't got nothing to say regarding the matters. He don't got nothing to say about what it is that is going on over here. But the master teacher, Yeshua, he always responds in the perfect way. And he knew the hearts of these people. He knew that they were sitting up here trying to be funny about these things. But he has the answer. He brings up this whole thing about an ox in the ditch. He brings up this thing about I know somebody, it makes me laugh every time he got something going on Shabbat, and I say, you know, I can't really do that thing because, you know, it's the Shabbat. He always want to talk about the ox in the ditch. Well, come on, man, it's the ox in the ditch. But the ox in the ditch ain't the ox in the ditch ain't you putting some in the ditch and then saying, I got an ox in the ditch. Mm-hmm. That's not the proper thing. That's not a true ox in the ditch. You can't put the thing in the ditch and then be like, I got an ox in the ditch, I got to get it out. It's like if an unforeseen situation happens and the ox fall in the ditch, then you got to get the thing out. But what is it that we talking about over here? Let's look at Deuteronomy 22 and 4. Deuteronomy 22 verse 4. We're going to talk about the ox in the ditch. Because, you know, he is coming from the Torah, I think.
Mm-hmm. When you see your brother's donkey or his ox fall down on the way, you shall not hide yourself from them. Help him raise them without fail.
Okay, very good. So this has to do with this animal that's not yours. So you caring about this thing just for the simple fact that it's an animal. It don't even got to be yours. Like if you see somebody else's thing, their ox in a ditch, you don't be like, well, that ain't mine, so I ain't gonna worry about it. You get it out. You get that thing out. But this is not necessarily connected to Shabbat. It's just connected to the idea of you caring for your brother's thing, his ox. If there's a problem with it, you put yourself out of your way for that thing. Now it takes it to another level. Look at Exodus 23 and 4 and 5.
When you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall certainly return it to him. When you see the donkey of him who hates you lying under its burden, you shall refrain from leaving it to him, and you shall certainly help him.
Okay, now we talking about somebody who this ain't even your people. In fact, this is your enemy's ox. So it don't got nothing to do with who owns the ox. It got to do with the ox itself. Get the thing up out of there. If it's sitting there, is up under its own burden. It's bogged down and it need to be freed. Help the thing, rescue it. And so the Torah wants for us to care about the animal, the thing. Torah in itself, we see many examples of Torah wanting for us to care for something, to help something that can't help its own self. Whether it's people, obviously people, or even animals of your brother's animals, or animals that ain't even your people's animal, it's your enemies. But consider this now, the traditions, the oral traditions of the rabbis, they said that they recognized the acts of mercy and necessity, such as saving an animal in distress, as a reason for them to override Shabbat restrictions.
Yeah.
And so it's the traditions that tie the ox in the ditch back to the Shabbat, where they come up with in their oral traditions to say, if you see an ox in the ditch on the Shabbat, get that thing out of there. Because there's already within Torah this idea that I'm supposed to care for not only my brother's ox, but my enemy's ox. And so he's speaking, when he brings this thing up, he's speaking to the minds of these people who want to sit up here and entrap him. That's why there's nothing that they can say. You want to sit up here and talk about me healing this person with dropsy. Meanwhile, you care more about an ox in the ditch on the Shabbat, and you won't say nothing about that, but you want to sit up here and say something about an actual person.
I'm sure if one of them had dropsy, that one of them would fix the problem too.
Yes. And it's interesting because in the previous situation, let's go over to Luke 13 and 14. Luke 13 and verse 14. We looked at this one already. 13 verse 14.
Yeah, but the ruler of the congregation, responding much displeased that Yeshua had healed on the Sabbath, said to the crowd, there are 6 days on which men should work, so come and be healed on them, and not on the Sabbath.
That's funny that happened, but if we think about having that in mind and going over to back to 14 to Yeshua, he's just going by the wayside. He just came upon the place and happens to see this guy. To him, it is an ox in the ditch. To him, he's not hanging out with this guy. Right? He just seen him just right now.
Comes across.
Just right now. And so even if we was to say that what Yeshua was doing was a Torah crime, even if we was going to say that, according to their own thoughts, for Yeshua, this is an ox in the dish, which is permissible. And so number one, Yeshua wasn't breaking no Torah command, number one. But number two, if you want to say that there's potential for him not to, we're able to see based on their own understandings that he is guiltless. All right, let's keep on going down here. Let's look at. Okay, so again, all of this happens, and they got nothing to say. And so we go down, and so it's interesting. Let's look at. Read again for us 9 through 10.
Nine?
Excuse me, 7 through 10.
And he spoke a parable to those who were invited, and he noted how they chose the best places, saying to them, when you are invited by anyone to a wedding feast, do not sit in the best place, lest one more distinguished than you be invited by him. And who invited you, and he who invited you, and him come and say to you, give this one place, and then you begin with shame to take the last place. Do not.
10.
Rather, when you are invited, go and sit down in the last place, so that when he who invited you comes, he shall say to you, friend, come up higher. Then you shall have esteem in the presence of those who sit at the table with you.
Okay, very good. Read 11 also.
For everyone who is exalting himself shall be humble, and he who is humbling himself shall be exalted.
Okay, very good. So it's okay. So Yeshua. First of all, I feel like Yeshua now is just playing with these guys now at this point. Because, first of all, he starts the whole thing and he's almost daring them to have something to say. Oh, is this breaking the Shabbat when I say this? And now he's looking at how they situated in there, and he talks about now y'all chose the best places to sit in here. And so who knows where they got him sitting now. Right? They got him probably over there close to the bathroom. And they got the nice seats. Right? And then so he gets over here and starts talking about the wedding feast. And so it's interesting that again, they're having a Shabbat meal. He goes into talking about this wedding feast. When we think about Shabbat, it being this time for us thinking about when we will enjoy eternal rest. When Yeshua comes and dwells with us who have been betrothed to him. And this Shabbat meal is this representation of that every week. But this wedding feast that they're partaking of, this grand thing, he begins to talk about this idea of don't sit up here and put yourself in the good spot, because when somebody greater than you comes, you got to get up out that seat and make way for the person that's greater than you. But in this whole picture, Yeshua's the one, though. Yeshua's the actual one who is going to come that's greater than them, that they put in the bad seat, who going to come and put them to shame because they're going to realize that they're not as great as they thought they was, and the one who they put at the kiddie table is better than them. What's he talking about if he's not talking about his own self first? I mean, there's other things. There's a greater point that, everyone who exalts themselves, they're going to be humble. And it's a greater thing where, yes, you should be humble and allow someone else to give you your situations instead of you trying to give it to yourself. Right? But I think more specifically is dealing with the idea that Yeshua, who they want to sit up there and bring down and act like he's not anything, at the end of the day, right, he is everything.
So in today's kids' terms, they refer to them as the main characters. They're the main character, right, boys? So like, he's the main character. So right here, and this is like these people were exalting themselves to be the main character, and they wasn't the main character.
They not but some supporting cast.
Yeah, you just so go sit in the back.
They might be on if it's a movie, they might be like person number 2.
Yeah,
They don't even got a
you ain't
name.
get credit. But you talking about you the main character. Go sit in the back.
Exactly. That's so funny. And so, but that's what Yeshua, I think that among other things, Yeshua is having these people to know that they have to kind of operate in humility, which they're not. Because they're putting Yeshua in these situations where, he's showing them who he is based on these acts that he's able to do, and they still want to kind of diminish his role and who he is and, the things that he's capable of. But here, he continues with this wedding feast theme, pictured by the situation that they're in terms of this Shabbat meal. And he goes on and he talks about the idea of, inviting not your friends and your brothers and your relatives and your rich neighbors, because when you invite them, it says, and you be repaid. It's interesting that he brings this part into it, because it's kind of like if it's in that scenario where you're to your feast, to your supper, you're inviting your rich friends and all of your buddies and all of your brothers and so on and so forth. You're in this endless loop. Freddie, he invited me to his dinner on last week, so I got to invite him to my dinner on this week. And you're just going around just kind of just in this obligatory kind of a situation. That's kind of the things that rich people, affluent people do. They have their little dinner parties, and I came to so and so's dinner party, so now I have to have a dinner party and have them come to mine, and it just keeps on going. And the thing, you're just kind of blessing each other when you don't even really need any blessings in that way. But Yeshua is saying you need to look to the people, not excluding your friends and brothers and neighbors and so on and so forth, but invite these other people who actually need something. These poor people and these crippled people and these lame people and these blind people, they need to be blessed. And they're not even able to repay you. They can't get in the cycle of having these dinner parties, but they could certainly be blessed by you including them in it. And if you do that, you're not going to get another dinner party as a repayment. You're going to be repaid at the resurrection. And so it's just like this thing keeps on, continues, and it builds. Read for us verse 15 again.
And when one of those who sat at the table with him heard this, he said to him, blessed is he who eats bread in the reign of Elohim. Okay, very good. So this guy understands the connection that's going on that Yeshua is making between where they're literally at, the Shabbat meal, and this wedding feast that he's bringing up. But he's missing something, the guy is, because he doesn't
see necessarily the selfishness that's had by the people and the way that they're acting and the things that Yeshua is saying. You know, they have these thoughts, the people of the day, especially the Pharisees, of the world to come. He said here the reign, the kingdom of Elohim, the world to come. This time when there will be this great feast is connected to the Messiah. It's connected to the end times, the coming of the Messiah, who, by the way, is sitting right in front of them that they don't actually recognize. But this feast, this thought that they had about this meal, this wedding feast that they will have in the kingdom, it's interesting. Some of the traditions and things that they talked about, getting back to this idea of fish on Shabbat, because one of the reasons why they think about this as this grand meal and not just bread, but it's this grand meal because at the grand meal with the in the world to come, they're going to actually feast on many things. One thing in particular, the behemoth that it talks about in Job.
You don't want the fish that ate Job?
Not the Leviathan, because they also talk about... No, you're talking about...
I was talking about Jonah.
You're talking about Jonah. But they have this idea of this big, huge behemoth thing that's talked about in Job. They eat that in the next world. The Leviathan, also from the book of Job, they eat that. There's grapes that are held from Eden that's turned into wine that they drink in the worlds to come. It's this grand meal that is had, which is one reason why you would think about this idea of them having this insider kind of a loop of things where, only the chosen are fit to be in this particular place, and they're eating these, undescribable things. And this guy is just saying, "Oh yes, blessed is he who eats bread," and he's going along with the thing. But Yeshua, because that we see him go more into this same thing and kind of doubling down on what he's talking about in terms of these people being invited and then coming up with these excuses as to why they're not going to be there, is the fact that these people, like where it goes into 18 down through 24, these people who come up with these excuses, I just bought a field, I can't come. I just bought 5 oxen, I can't come. I'm too busy. I just got married, I can't come to you.
You can't come and drink the grapes from the Garden of Eden? Why?
These people have all of these things, these lawfully valid excuses. Marriage. I just bought this land. I just bought these oxen. But at the end of the day, these things are in fact carnal things, and they're denying this spiritual thing because of these carnal things. And so Yeshua, the overarching thing that Yeshua is trying to get these people to understand is that you want to sit up here and talk about the kingdom of Elohim and the greatness of it, the necessity to be there, but you don't want to go to the people who need to be there, but didn't receive the quote unquote invitation. And so now, because of that, guess what? He said in verse 24, those men, it says, for I say to you that none of those men who were invited shall taste of the supper.
So my-
Instead, all the people who actually needed to eat, they come. All the people that was down and out, they go out and get gathered in because of the rejection of those ones who had all of these physical carnal excuses not to enter. And so when we look at Yeshua and what he's doing over here with these parables and talking to these Pharisees who live these quote unquote righteous lives, within the, it turns into kind of this self-righteous situation because they're only worried about their own selves and they're not worried about those on the quote unquote outside. They look down upon these people over here who maybe, he's probably trying to do his best. He's got his sickness. It's not necessarily something that he didn't ask for the sickness. He needs help, but they want to use him like he's a pawn. Meanwhile, he's a human being. They treat their animals greater than who they'll treat a human. And so they're living this life where they've gotten a kind of invitation to come to this supper, but through their behavior, they've said to the one who's invited them, I have these other things going on that are more important than this supper. And for them, this other thing that's more important is their own righteousness. Again, we look at these excuses. These people aren't doing things that is sinful on the surface, right? They're lawful things. He just bought some field. I got to take care of this. I ain't got time to be partying, right? But who is it that's giving the invitation? I just got married. This is the most exciting thing that could possibly happen. But who is the invitation from? Mm-hmm. And so, again, and from their own perspective, when they think about this great wedding feast, it always deals with end times and messianic, the world to come, the coming of the Messiah. And so when we think about the thing that they're passing up inside of this parable, they're passing up eternity for carnality. Just like these Pharisees are sitting here wanting to be this or that, and are looking at the Messiah and making these accusations about him. And so where, as we begin to, be done with talking about this here, where is it that our hearts actually even lie? Because in the example, these people are so caught up with their own personal situations. The kingdom is about calling those people to repentance. Mm-hmm. It's not about kind of a self thing. It's about calling others to repentance. Just like at some point how you was called to repentance. If there's a continual loop of anything, is people being called to repentance. Mm-hmm. And so once we get to the place where we just want to just invite our friends and our rich neighbors and our brothers, we're right over here with these people in this parable. if this feast that we want to participate in is so great, let's not be selfish about the thing and let people experience the greatness. And I think that's what Yeshua is, trying to say to these people. They had this intimate situation that they had, and they thought that they was going to, get Yeshua into a trap. But at the end of the day, they were the ones that Yeshua turned things around on them and caused them to see that they're not even looking at these things properly. And so I think that when we look at Yeshua's words in this situation, he can talk to us as well, because we have to always remember, we definitely want to be able to enjoy the things that the Master has done for each and every one of us, but also understanding that he didn't do it just for us, but for us to continue this thing and to bring others into this greatness that we've learned about, so that we can all participate in this supper.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions, comments?
I do. I mean, the fact that he says that he equates this great ending, the long Hava wedding supper, to being his supper. I should have said something to those people there. Like, whatever you guys got going, I got the greatest going.
Yeah. They obviously were going to miss all of this stuff that he was talking about when he starts off even by saying the whole thing about the table positions. It lets all of us know that they don't even know what's going on here. But at the end of the day, when we're able to see that, he says it in other ways, the last will be first. And the first will be last. And so, when we look at Yeshua, he came in such a way where he exhibits for us, humility and the idea of being a servant and not going around talking about, I'm this and I am that, but out here doing the actual work, so that in the time to come, when all is revealed, we're able to see, I thought that he was nothing, but meanwhile he is everything. And I think that's really how we are to go around. You don't gotta sit up here and say that, you're so this or that. Let your actions show that. He didn't have to say, I'm the greatest of all time, but the things that he was doing bear witness that he was.
They should have been like opening the door, sitting them down somewhere.
You would think.
What can you teach us today? Like, everybody sit down and pay attention.
It's crazy the amount of pride that these people must have had to know that this guy did the things that he did, and they were still sitting up here trying to act like they was somehow better than him. It's incomprehensible. I don't understand. Okay. All right.
I also was thinking something else. This is kind of like, I think it was, what's the guy's name? Like the whole peer review thing. And like you have ideas and new things, and then the establishment tries to who was the guy? He like had some kind of paper and he sent it in, and they didn't respect his work.
Are you talking about the actor?
Yeah, the actor guy, and it's like you get
Terrence
these,
Howard.
Yeah, Terrence Howard. Yeah.
yeah, like like you're not good enough to even be presenting something to us. Like you know what I mean? Like
That I mean, that's exactly the mind frame of academia, and those people who have all of those letters behind their name is just like these Pharisees over here.
Yep.
They couldn't fathom the Messiah coming up through the ranks through not coming through one of their schools. Like to them, this don't make any sense that you're the guy, and I never seen you coming up. And that's just how those people are. It didn't matter if the guy has some amazing thoughts and ideas. Just for the simple fact that he didn't have no letters by his name, I can't even you can't even listen to what you're saying. Hold on, just stop right there. You can't talk to me. You're not qualified. Like that's how they are. But it's like a pride. It's a pride thing. And that's always going to hinder your growth when you're not able to kind of just step down off of your high horse. I don't know where that thing comes from. You step down off of your high horse and hear what it is that anyone might have to say, because it might just be genius, and because you're stuck in your pride, you miss it. And in this case, I mean, it's,
They should. They could.
go ahead.
That's why usually, not all the time, but most times, any people that got like the letters in front of their name, I lose a little bit of respect for them. Goes down automatically.
It's on the reverse.
Yeah, it's reverse for me. Cause you gotta prove that them letters didn't blow your mind up to the point where you can't come down. I can respect you for getting that knowledge that you in. I'm like, clearly this person does, so I'll listen to you there, but once you step out of there, you gotta prove to me that you didn't let that path that you took, disconnect you.
Yeah. That's what happens.
Yep.
That's what happens. It takes you into this other realm where you're just so intelligent. You're just so whatever. I have to sit up here and temper my mind so I can come down and converse with you lowly peasants. It don't make any sense, and it's interesting when you look at some of these people. Not everybody, but when you look at some of these people and the way that they talk, it's like you're literally just putting all of these words in a sentence just to make it sound good, and you're not actually saying anything.
Yeah.
I don't like it when people talk like that. Like it just puts big words in and all kinds of, I can't even understand things like that.
I like big words, but like when and I noticed this a long time when you read certain books, it's like they might have 10, let's just say 5 paragraphs that really you said one thing,
Yeah.
but you're saying it in different ways for whatever reason. I'm not sure. Maybe you just want to get that word count on the thing.
That's what it seemed like. I'm like, some books
But
is
you
too
could have
long.
just said this. You could have just said that, and then it's been done right there.
I hate
But
that.
you said it. You're intelligent to be able to say something 5 paragraphs long that could also be say in one word or one sentence.
One
Well,
sentence.
that's the indoctrination of the school system. They'd be like, oh, you need this, I need this to be 10 pages long.
That's
Or
right.
whatever.
Yeah, they get used to that.
Page.
Yeah, you could have expressed that idea very fast.
Yeah, yeah, you could
But
have.
instead,
Why you say that?
you made it extra long.
Especially,
what? I could be confused. Like I get you right here,
yeah,
and then you say all these other things that you're saying the same thing, but now I'm confused.
yeah.
I don't even understand anymore.
Yep.
Well, meanwhile, you're just only saying the same thing you started saying. But at the end of the day, it's pride. It turns into pride, and when you look at what happened with these Pharisees, it just was pride for them, and they was unable to actually look at Yeshua, who sat down and ate this wonderful meal with them, and they didn't even know who they was with. And it's so sad that he gives them. It's almost like he's prophesying. You're gonna see me in the world to come, and you're gonna be shamed when you got to get up out of your seat and move to the back.
Yeah.
You might not even be there because you might be one of the people who got an appointment that day.
Yeah, there's that.
It's time to eat up the Leviathan.
Okay.
I think it's like
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
I did want to say something.
Go ahead.
I was switching them out. The people that were invited in the beginning, like talking about they had the wedding, they had all these other things to go to prior to. Is it right to assume that he sought them people out first because he thought that they would say yes? Because when I was listening to it, I was kind of likening it to people who have been in the word for a long time, like they consider themselves, followers and things, and sometimes there's this level of like complacency that can happen, where you can lose that urgency or potentially maybe that fire or that thirst. So I was just wondering if those people, if he thought they were going to say yes because they knew who he was. I just know that there were some times when things happen, I find myself being a bit disobedient because sometimes I can be like, oh, there's time. I mean, it's been like 10 years. Like, what's one incident? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'll say yes later, so I'm just curious to see what your thoughts are.
I think that if we look at Israel, as a people, and even if we go all the way back to what we was looking at in the Torah portion, the Most High made a promise to Abraham. And so sometimes the Most High just do things just because that's what's just supposed to be done. And it's not necessarily connected to a response necessarily to that thing that he did. It's just about kind of just protocols. The most, when Paul talks about the gospel being preached, it's to the Jew first. Yeshua showed himself to his own people first. And they was the ones in that time to say, you ain't who you saying that you are. In fact, you deserve death. And so when we look at these people in the parable, the people in the parable, they're asked first because they're the ones who is supposed to be there. Like when you think about this, if I have this big gathering, the first people I'm going to invite is the people that I know. They're supposed to be there, not because they're not going to say yes. I'm going to ask them because those are the people who they deserve to be there and I want them to be there. But because of their own busyness and things that they think that they have going on, they say, "Oh, I got plans. on that day. I can't really make it. I just did this major thing and my own thing. I can't be sitting up here dealing with. It's like but the people who are invited are supposed to be there. And so deserve even to be there. They deserve to be there. All of these in these examples. But then when they don't show up, there's so much room here. There's so much room here. Here. We got all this food. we done got the DJ for 5 hours. You know, he got to play for somebody. Just go out here and just get some people now. And so at the end of the day, it goes beyond those who are supposed to be there to whoever's just able to just fill the place. In the parable, that's what happens, right? It just go get any old body. But I think when you think about it in that way, it keeps the idea of you're there not because you earned a spot there. You're there out of the decision of the inviter. Not because you worked your way in the door. Because the people who's quote unquote should be there in terms of their merit, they didn't even want to be there. And so I think, it's not kind of like a direct parallel, but you can see where the point of it is the fact that the ones who are actually there filling the place, they're there because the master wanted them to be there and made a way for them to be there, not because of anything that they did within their own self. Now, when he talks about this again, we can see that he makes clothes for the people to wear, and so they can't come into the thing with their bum clothes on. They gotta get the new clothes on. They gotta probably get a shower too, right? So they get that essence up off of them. But all of that stuff is provided, though. All of that stuff is provided by the inviter, because the people that were supposed to be there, the people that quote unquote deserved to be there, the first ones on the inviter's mind, and they said, I have better things to do. And so, again, these are just 3 examples now. There was people who he wanted to be there, who was there. But these particular ones that he invited, they wasn't there. And so we got to remember that part too. It wasn't like everybody that was there was people who didn't even know about it. But he helps us to understand that there was this one that he did invite, that he wanted to invite, that deserved to be invited, but he didn't get there. And so we got that other part too. It wasn't like the only people that's there is the ones who didn't fit that criteria. They was the ones who responded properly to the ask. And so we got to think about that too. It's just a parable. It's giving us an example of something it's not all inclusive, right? Okay. Hopefully. Okay. All right. So I think many more things can be said about these words of Messiah, but for now, I think we're going to be done for today. Y'all willing, we'll be back on next Shabbat to talk more about the words of the Master and also the weekly Torah portion. But for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.